to overtime.
Dwayne Wade right at the body of Anderson Varejao. Welcome to your Kodak moment, Anderson Varejao.
Doncic pulls up, three-pointer. Bang! Bang! It's good! Doncic wins the game at the buzzer!
Let's get back to some basketball, shall we? A big part of what I love in the draft are draft day trades. And, especially with the fact that the first and the second pick are available for trade, we're probably going to get a few great ones. Now, there's probably no superstar level talent available on the trade market, much to my own sadness, because Ben Simmons in Minnesota would make me happier than almost anything else. But you got to start working around the edges with that. I got a few, reported trade offers written down that we can talk about a little bit. Starting out with, what would the Timberwolves do with the first pick? I got one offer that's a trade down and one trade that would just be a straight up swap for some players. First things first, the Atlanta Hawks, you got Anthony Edwards, who is probably, just based on measurements, the perfect player alongside Trae Young. Super physical, super big-bodied, could be a great defender next to Trae Young, which is exactly what the Hawks need, and also could be, a great secondary ball handler. I would say that they also need a backup point guard pretty heavily, but you're not going to spend a top 5-10 pick on a backup point guard. So yeah, Anthony Edwards is a Georgia native, plays for University of Georgia, grew up in Atlanta, would probably love to be there. I'm not sure the Hawks would love to have him in his home city, because I talked about this last week. But even then, like that could be beautiful to watch. And the Hawks, as a team that has routinely been in the lower levels of fan attendance, could really use that. Additionally, they made that trade deadline trade for Clint Capella, and the fit between Capella and John Collins has been questioned a lot. And John Collins is coming up on restricted free agency next year. And that could be a contract that the Hawks don't want to pay, because he reportedly wants over $25 million annually. Now, on the other side of this, I'm not saying the Timberwolves have all the cash in the world. But what I am saying is that the Timberwolves love to take flyers on players about to hit restricted free agency in this new, management. You can see that with Juancho Hernangomez, with Malik Beasley. That's they've been willing to take those shots. And if they have to lose some players in the meantime, they'll do it. But that leads us to this trade. Would the Hawks be willing to give up number 6 and John Collins to trade up to number 1? That's a steep package. It really is. That's a heavy package. On the Timberwolves side, you don't add more defense, but you add a power forward who is a great rebounder alongside Karl Anthony Towns. You add more shooting, and you add a lob target. That would be a fun team to watch. Now, would you have to add in some sort of sign and trade for Juancho Hernangomez, or maybe, add a few future seconds? I mean, even add Jarrett Culver in, the former 6th overall pick. Maybe you'd have to do that. Maybe. But I think this is a trade that could happen. I mean, it's not super likely, but mostly because I don't think the Hawks would take that package for John Collins. I don't think you give up John Collins to move up 5 picks in the draft. Now, if you offer just straight up the first pick for John Collins, I think the Hawks do it in a second. If you send out John Collins, if you send out the first pick, the 17th pick, and Jarrett Culver for John Collins in the 6th, I think that's more realistic. But I've seen this one floated around on lots of Timberwolves, Twitter posts, tweets. And I thought it was worth taking a look at, because the Hawks get their secondary playmaker, get a hometown kid, a jersey that's going to sell real well, and someone that they were slated to take, or were trying to, get some lottery luck to take previously. And then, of course, with John Collins, as great as he is, you gotta question if he's really someone worth the max. He shoots it well from 3, but he doesn't play defense, and he's playing in what could be the ideal system for him in terms of running up and down the court with an incredible playmaking guard and getting a whole lot of usage in the pick and roll. But now that usage in the pick and roll is going to go down with Clint Capella, whose main use is in the pick and roll as a roll man. And then on the defensive end, he's a rim protector. And I mean, John Collins can kind of fit in on defense there, but do you really want two players that are just lob threats? I mean, I know John Collins can hit some threes to make up for it, but even then, like, it's not like you're going to have the best fitting offense now. Especially with, I mean, I didn't like the Clint Capella to begin with, the Clint Capella trade to begin with, but now that you have him, you have to account for him as some element of your future or what you need next year. So, John Collins and six for the first pick. Who did the Timberwolves take at 6? Because we've talked about the Hawks taking, Anthony Edwards at number 1. At 6, I think that's a perfect place for Isaac Okoro. I mean, I absolutely love him as a prospect. I see a bigger Andre Roberson day one with much more potential to develop on the offensive end. His shot mechanics aren't broken. They just kind of don't hit. He's an incredibly smart cutter and passer, and he always seemingly makes the right play. He's a big wing. I mean, if you're convinced that he's going to hit 36% of his threes, I would take him with the first pick. That's how high I am on Isaac Okoro as a game-changing defender. So you take him at 6, and I don't think there's much question there. If he's not there, I mean, we've heard Timberwolves are very high on Obi Toppin. I hate that, mostly because he's not going to play any defense whatsoever. He has some of the worst side-to-side agility I've ever seen. And, he's 22. He may just be a more athletic Kyle Kuzma when he comes into the league. He hasn't played against real competition in college. He made Dayton relevant this year and absolutely deserves the credit as the player of the year, but the college basketball player of the year. But I'm not too sure about whether he really deserves to be a top 5 pick or a top 6 pick. And I mean, do you really think that he fits well with Karl Anthony Towns as another guy who's not going to play defense? Like, John Collins likely isn't going to play defense, but he adds a lot, and you know what he is, and you know he's going to improve. And he's a weak side shot blocker, and could, having 2 shot blockers, Karl Anthony Towns has improved on defense every single year. If you have 2 slightly below average or average defenders as your bigs, I don't think that's the worst thing. I think if you have Isaac Okoro, you have Josh Okogie, you have 2 incredibly great defensive wings, you have Malik Beasley as another shot maker, this team would have a lot of versatility. That's, if you put it together correctly with Jake Layman as well, that's 7 players on your roster that would be in a playoff rotation already if they even make it. And then you also have the 17th pick if we don't assume that they trade it for John Collins. If they don't, and the Timberwolves still have the 17th pick, I mean, I'd be praying that either Sadiq Bey or Patrick Williams falls there. It's unlikely, though. I love Tyrell Terry. I think legitimately right-handed D'Angelo Russell who will play defense. That's how I see Tyrell Terry. Maybe he doesn't have the scoring upside. Maybe he's not going to go for 50, but god damn, does he do everything right. And this is someone that, look, if he falls to the Sixers, that is maybe the most perfect fit I can think for player to team. It's that good. It's genuinely that good. He brings shooting. He brings good to great playmaking. Has some issues creating his own shot, but even then does it well. He runs off screens real hard. He is like exactly what you want in a backup point guard and could end up being a fringe starter. And I mean, could end up being a fringe starter as in like year 1. He could be a very good start. He could be Kyle Lowry. Look, Tyrell Terry is going to be real good. That's what I think. Tyrell Terry is going to be real good. And if the Timberwolves take him at 17, I'd be happy. Hell, if he manages to fall to 33, I'd be even happier. If he falls to 33, I would lose my mind. I would be so excited for that. And then the Timberwolves would have what? They would have Cat. They would have D'Lo. Well, let's do the starting lineup and then off the bench. They'd have D'Lo, Malik Beasley, or Josh Okogie. They'd likely have Jake Layman there to fill out the 3. Then in this trade, they'd have Collins and then Cat. And then off the bench, a bench of Okogie, Okoro, you know, Jake Layman was incredible. Not Jake Layman. Ooh, Jordan McLaughlin was incredible. And then you fill it out with having like Tyrell Terry in there, and it may lack some shooting, but you still have not John Collins. You still have James Johnson who can hit a three. You still have Juancho Hernan Gomez if you retain him who can hit a three. I know Malik Beasley is a free agent. I just think there's no way they let him walk. He's been practicing in Timberwolves gear. Seems very clear that he's going to be back. The money aspect is a question, but even then, it seems very clear he's going to be back. And then on the Hawks end, you got Trey, of course, great player, maybe a good stats on a bad team type player, but even then, he's a game-changing passer. Awful defender, but I mean, at some point, you got to ignore that. You have Anthony Edwards, Ant-Man, out of, Georgia, fits in. You have, do you want to put Kevin Huerter, Cam Reddish? So for your 3 and your 4, you have some combination of Kevin Huerter, Cam Reddish, and DeAndre Hunter. And then at your 5, you have Capella with some depth off the bench. Of course, you can sign some backup point guard. They're supposed to be in the mix for KCP, which isn't a point guard, but could still be big for that team. As far as point guards go, they need someone to play off of Trae Young well. I mean, Jeff Teague clearly wasn't able to do that. Is this a team that could go after Goran Dragic? Hell, is this a team that could go after Fred VanVleet? It gives them stuff to work with, and it opens up cap space going forward because they don't have to worry about that John Collins extension or re-signing. They don't have to worry about that anymore. All right. Well, as far as other trades for the Wolves go, we got Brogdon and Sabonis for the first overall pick flat reported. I assume James Johnson would have to be dealt in that for salary cap reasons. But, the Timberwolves get their other guard and get a big next to Cat. I just don't like the presence of, look, Cat is one of the most effective post players. I don't think you add a post playing 4 next to him. Especially when Sabonis has issues playing on the defensive end as well. If you're going to go all in on offense, it at least has to be a good fit at the 4. And that's a worry of mine. Brogdon, fits on every single team. Him and D'Angelo Russell could probably manage to play together, but it wouldn't be perfect. And then, let's move on to number 2, because I think as interested as I am in the Timberwolves pick, the Warriors pick is probably objectively more interesting. I've been proposing the Suns moving up from number 10 to get LaMelo Ball with pick 10 and Kelly Oubre. The Warriors move down to where they would probably get more value and want a win now role player. We've heard Tyrese Halliburton, we've heard Devin Vassell. And it just seems that they're not as interested in James Wiseman, mostly because he's a Clint Capella type, and they're not going to be playing with a big man all the time. Their strength has come from having a lot of these wings, and Kelly Oubre would add to that. And at number 10, you get Tyrese Halliburton, who, plays off of other playmakers really well and can create for others. With him, Draymond, Steph would be incredible basketball because they're all going to make the right decisions when it comes to passes and the ball is just going to be flying around. If not, Devin Vassell, he's your prototypical 3-and-D wing. I would say closer to prime Kent Bazemore than Trevor Ariza or Robert Covington, mostly because he doesn't have the height of Robert Covington. I have some worries about what he did to his shot because it looks like he's just catapulting the ball now, and his release point was a huge strength of his. But even then, got to have some hope there. One that Bill Simmons proposed, one that I wanted to throw my hat into the ring on. Number 14 and Marcus Smart for number 2 and the Iguodala trade exception. What do people think about that? I think the Celtics lose that trade 9 times out of 10. Excuse me. Mostly because, Marcus Smart is so hugely important for their defense and everything they do there. He's the linchpin of that team. And do the Celtics really want to go up that far just for James Wiseman? I don't know. They need a big. They really do. Daniel Tice is one of the more underrated big men in the league. He does everything you need him to do. But even then, doing everything you need him to do sometimes isn't enough when it comes to, I need you to do something great, and he says, all I can do is good. And that's a little sad, because Daniel Tice, I can't remember if he was undrafted or whatever, but he's been a real surprise for the Celtics developing into a starting big man. And he's been good at doing that. But James Wiseman would add some upside to this team. And if he is this weird hybrid lefty Kevin Durant, David Robinson thing, well, that would, open a championship window into a dynasty potentially. But, we heard this rumor from 2 years ago when the Celtics were supposed to trade Jaylen Brown and something else for the 6th overall pick to take Mo Bamba. I mean, come on now. Danny Ainge is always going to make some calls. Do I actually think they're going to move up? Hell no. Do I think they should do it if it costs Marcus Smart? No. I don't think... Well, look. Year 1, there's not going to be any player in this draft as good as Marcus Smart. I think that applies to year 2, too. Where it really comes down to, do you want more contract flexibility? And I know the Jason Tatum extension is coming up, and that's going to cost a lot. And outside of that, you have the Gordon Hayward contract coming off the books next year, but it's still a big deal. You just don't have as much flexibility. And would clearing up that $18 million give you that flexibility? I don't know. Maybe it will. What I can guarantee that it won't do is make you better this year. And for a championship contender, I don't think they want to do that. On the Warriors side, Marcus Smart takes some ill-advised threes. Now, you with the Warriors, you'd be happy to have his incredible defense as someone that would really add to, the Klay Thompson, Draymond Green, and whatever assortment of wings you want. Andrew Wiggins is not a plus defender. I want to mention that. But whatever assortment of wings you want that would just, play defense well and scrap for the ball. And Marcus Smart would fit that. But it would mean that Klay Thompson is your 3. Or if not, you have to run this weird 3-guard lineup. And I know if any team would do it, it'd be the Warriors. But Steph, Marcus Smart, Klay, Wiggins, and Draymond sounds like a really weirdly fitting team. It doesn't sound like it would work perfectly. And of course, no team is going to work perfectly. But the Warriors have their system that they want to build people into. And I think the Warriors would take that trade in a heartbeat. I think the Celtics would hang up in a heartbeat. But it's still something to think about.